Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of our Lightning interview series. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy and looking forward to what I'm sure is a very well-deserved weekend. So as always, we want to make these sessions interesting and interactive, so please do introduce yourself and tell us where you're joining from and what you do. So before we get started on today's interview, I want to make a few quick points on upcoming events at ODSC as well as AI+. And we have quite a few things happening over the course of the next month. On March 30th, we'll have the 5th course on our deep learning bootcamp with the ever excellent Dr. John Cron. And that continues to be quite popular. It's not too late to join since the previous courses are available on demand and you can actually start right away. On April 1st, as you can see, we'll have our next Lightning interview, which is next Friday, actually. This time with the author of Ace the Data Science Interview, Nick Singe, which will be a very good session to follow on from today's show. And that's followed by April 8th on an interview with Professor Tina Elasirad on risk assessment for machine learning. And she's also actually speaking at ODSC East, and we have a whole focus area there on ML safety, or otherwise known as AI safety. And our big announcement is that ODSC East is back in person on April 19th to 21st, but it is both in person and virtual. And by the way, all talks are free for both in-person and virtual. So I think you get access to about 120 sessions there. And if you haven't had a chance, go grab one of those. Just go to odsc.com/Boston and you'll see that as well. We also have an expo going on, lots of demo talks and all that good stuff. There'll be networking, meet the speaker, meet the experts. We'll actually have in-person and virtual book signings as well. And as always, and by the way, our full schedule is live with time, so you can go check that out at your leisure. And want to do a brief mention to AI Plus Careers. This is a free community service we have, and it's free to both employers as well as people looking for careers, and we kind of have a recommendation and matching service there, so you go on that at any time you want. And if you're in the job market. And we will, as always, have a career fair at ODSC East. I believe it's on April 21st. And I think there's about 40 or 50 companies advertising positions in what is a quite hot job market. So check that out if you have a chance. And as always, this session will be recorded and available on AI Plus, our AI Plus learning platform, so you can go check that out and previous sessions as well. All right, so that's it with our housekeeping items. So I'm especially thrilled to introduce today's guest, Mona Khalil. Now, Mona is a data science manager at Greenhouse Software in New York City, where they contribute to data-informed decision-making across the company and machine learning solutions to improve the hiring process for Greenhouse customers. Mona previously worked in government, creating analytics and machine learning solutions to improve the lives of New Yorkers, and continues to be involved in civic projects to a number of volunteer and nonprofit organizations. They are also a highly experienced instructor and speaker, having presented at ODSC and other conferences several times. And Mona will be presenting 2 sessions at ODSC East. The first is part of our beginner bootcamp and will be on SQL for data scientists, very important skill. And the second one is a talk, which I know she's very excited about, which is leveling up your organization's capacity for data-informed decisions. Mona, welcome to the show.
Hi, Seamus. It's a pleasure.
So Mona, you've been at ODSC quite a number of times here, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for those in our audience who are not familiar with you, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself? And in addition, given it's the theme of today's interview, can you tell us a bit about your journey to becoming a data scientist?
Yeah, absolutely. So for just context, I'm currently the data science manager at Greenhouse Software. If you don't know who we are, think about how anytime you're interested in applying for a job someplace, you scroll down to the bottom of their website, click the careers page, and then you're brought to an external website. That's very often us. But we do a lot more behind the scenes beyond just posting jobs. We provide a framework and a structure for companies to evaluate their candidates fairly and equitably across the hiring process. We're huge proponents of what we call structured interviewing as a tool for fair hiring, so you can find the best person for the job that you have available. I've been here at Greenhouse now going on 3 years, started off as a data scientist, have recently become the manager of the data science team. I think I've got a lot of different things in my background that you mentioned. I'll focus specifically early on. I actually started off in academia. I was getting a PhD in psychology, decided I really wanted something much more hands-on and immediate. So I went down the route of data analytics into data science using the strong statistical training that I received as part of my program. And through that, I've worked in the public sector in education. I also worked in New York City government in an analytics division, specifically helping to find solutions to improve processes, improve quality of services for people in public housing. From then I went and worked as a data science product manager at DataCamp for about a year before finding my way to Greenhouse now, where I've been for a long time. So a little bit of, I guess, what you might call a non-traditional background and non-traditional route to get here, but interesting and lots of fun nonetheless.
Yeah, and that sounds like, when I first started ODSC quite a number of years ago, asking around how people found their path to data science, it's amazing how many people come from even less non-traditional backgrounds than yourself, because you've got an excellent foundation in statistics and math, and that sounds like it's been an awesome journey so far.
Yeah.
So a little bit about the theme of today's interview. As data scientists, machine learning engineer, or data professionals, we're always told to follow our passion. So what does that mean for a data science career to follow your passion?
Such a great question. I think it means a lot of different things for a lot of people, but ultimately it's what brings you to work and lights you up every day. In the context of data science, I think that can look like a few different things. So many times that comes from the industry perspective that you bring and your interest in solving a problem in a specific area. So I've really grown an interest in the hiring space, having worked here, and I think even outside of that, I've always wanted to do some good, have some positive benefit for society, specifically leveraging my background knowledge in psychology and the behavioral sciences, which has been a huge asset here. For a lot of people, I know what gets them to work all day, every day, and motivated to contribute is solving really interesting problems. Solving interesting problems in a specific space, leaning into an expertise in a specific kind of modeling. But ultimately, I think it usually falls into some category like that. You're either interested in a domain, you're interested in solving a specific type of problem, or you're interested in a specific technical set of expertise that you bring to the table across many different domains.
All right, and it's interesting. When I listen to various speakers at ODSC and study this myself, the role of a data scientist, so much of it is involved in data capture, data generation, data profiling, transformation, and you saw the I think it's a pretty famous graph where 80% of your job is involved in just data cleaning of one sort or the other, data wrangling, and then the rest of it's modeling. But you think and secondly, to follow that up, I see a lot of blogs on Medium which I think are kind of clickbaity, like why I hate my data science job and why people are leaving data science, and a lot of that's based around it's a much more boring job than you think it is. And I think having been a software engineer and machine learning engineer myself, it's I think people need to understand how much passion is the driver, and when you're doing the boring bits of the job, that helps you get through it. Do you kind of find that yourself, or is your career more exciting that you have someone else to take care of all the data cleaning and all that stuff? Do you think it rings through to all the different tasks you have?
I will say, I think it's lately, there have been some amazing tools that have been coming out, let's say DBT and Fivetran, that have really been helping with the data engineering side of things. I think data cleaning and processing and understanding the foundation and context of your data will always be a big part of your job. The actual modeling component is a very small proportion of what you're actually going to do, regardless of your focus. But I think the journey is a big part of it. And along the way, as part of, the data cleaning, the data exploration stuff, you learn things about your data, about the people that you're capturing data about what's important to them, about what the underlying trends are. And all of those pieces of information are value in and of themselves, and being able, I think, to leverage those and tap into the potential of the steps you're doing along the way is a big part of what can drive motivation for your work, as opposed to just, it's 80% of a boring process to get to a 20% modeling. I don't really see that going away. I think it's better. That's certainly a case, I think, for us too, where like modeling and cleaning and processing data is really a never-ending process, because as soon as you build and understand a data, there's always going to be new opportunities for you to move on to something else, and then you begin the process again. But like look for, it's a scientific, like inquisitive process. Like a big part of the cleaning is digging. Like there's just a curiosity along the way as you do that can really, I think, bring a level of motivation and value to your steps, as opposed to just waiting for that last step.
No, that's excellent point. And I think a lot of us sort of data nerds can kind of relate to that. And it's interesting what you say about DBT and it's part of the modern data stack. I've been hearing a lot about that lately, and now you've confirmed that data scientists are actually using it as well, because a few people were asking me about that. So that's pretty cool. So just to switch gears slightly. So Mona, in addition to your job as the data science manager, you've also been teaching numerous classes for years. Why is that a passion, and what have you learned about your students as well as yourself by teaching these classes over the years?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think for context, I've been teaching longer than I've been in analytics. I think the first time I was I started teaching when I was still an undergrad. So I was probably 21 when I was put in front of my first classroom, and I found a lot of value and reward in being able to communicate something to people who otherwise, like if I had maybe not done a good job, just read off the slides or something, that like the quality of the work I did could make a huge difference for whether or not people got something and loved a subject. So I think leaning into that has always been incredibly valuable. I think I've done teaching, tutoring. I think a big part of the tutoring that I've done is specifically like just in looking for tutoring clients, I found a lot of people who tended to be more women, looking for other people who like might be sympathetic to the fact that they were scared of, say, like a mathematics topic, and being able to just sit down with someone, create an environment where they can slow down, take a deep breath, and actually see the material for something other than scary and something that has a lot of potential to help understand the world around us. Really, like I really found that rewarding. So I think since then, I've taught a lot of introductory classes related to whatever field I've been interested in. That started off with statistics. So I've taught intro statistics, more like intermediate statistical topics as I've gone. I've been teaching intro to SQL with ODSC now. I believe this is going to be year 3 that I'm going to be doing that session with you guys. And I know folks have really enjoyed it. I've always tried my best to make it fun and interesting as well as relevant, and answer a lot of the basic questions that are necessary for you to really get started if you've never touched it before. And along the way, just doing that, I learned more about my own craft. And I think I don't remember the exact adage, but the idea that if you know how to teach something, you know your own craft better is 100% true. And like having that complete, like solid foundation in an introductory topic gets you started on so many more things more effectively.
No, absolutely right. And I can attest to the quality of your classes. And I always used to joke with people, I never trusted a data scientist who didn't know SQL. So thank you so much for teaching that class. And I know people love it. Now, you're a data science manager at Greenhouse Software. Tell us about your job there, a day in the life of Mona as a data scientist, so to speak.
So I think I'll start with my day in the life as a manager, which is a little bit different than I think as it was as a data scientist, individual contributor. Nowadays, a big part of my work is empowering and creating environments for the folks on my team to be able to do their best work. And we have folks from a lot of different backgrounds that bring many different sets of expertise to the table to tackle a lot of different problems, largely within the R&D space. So we are a very product-focused team. We own product analytics, we own experimentation, we own internal and customer-facing machine learning. So we have a lot of different things that are on our plate. And it's been incredibly rewarding to just focus on what makes a difference for my folks. I've got a lot less time, I think, on a day-by-day basis to focus on, say, like doing an analysis or a statistical project. I absolutely make time for that because it's important for me to stay relevant and helpful to my folks and in touch with what they need. But that's definitely like a lot less. So like on my team, for example, a big focus that we have is understanding diversity and inclusion in the hiring process and how we can enable that. I think for our customers, what understanding and expertise can we bring to the table about what processes allow for and empower a fair hiring process. We also, given that we're a hiring software, we have a ton of unstructured data. So a big part of our work is thinking about how can we bring structure and meaning to our data in a wide variety of ways, sometimes including machine learning models, sometimes more like rules-based and semantic approaches. We also own A/B testing and experimentation on my team, as well as supporting like the broader R&D org and just answering day-to-day questions and building upon a body of product knowledge as we go. So that's largely what's owned across my team. We have some folks with different areas of specialization within that, but largely if anybody wants an opportunity to participate in those, we do try our best to make that available to everyone. So for me, that looks like a lot of planning, a lot of like planning, like a long-term data science strategic roadmap that looks like day-to-day planning to support my team, very similar to what you might expect in an engineering manager kind of role. There's also, I think, just contributing in a limited capacity, specifically with our like L&D days or learning and development days, to also do like analytic projects myself to make sure that I'm still to make sure that I'm able to help out my folks and that I'm not, only just like a manager who works on operational things.
Right. Yeah, now, so just studying greenhouse software a little bit myself, I do know that you guys practice what you preach and your hiring process is very transparent. And I think quite a few of our audience may be either in the process of looking for a job themselves or looking at some point for a career change in the future. And I think to be very interested in this next question, if you can tell us a bit about the hiring process at Greenhouse Software. How do you recruit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually recently, in the last 6 months, hired for several new folks on my team. So we, having just recently completed the hiring process, you're also welcome to look at our Glassdoor reviews. We actually have a couple of mentions about our data science interview with some details that can, I think, further supplement everything I'm talking about here. I think, like I said, Greenhouse implements what we call structured hiring. So very much like a structured process that everybody goes through fairly and gets evaluated on the same criteria, where data is collected about those criteria, and you can objectively take a look at them in the process to be able to make fair decisions, because there's just so much potential for bias in the hiring process. So recently, with the roles we hired for, we started off with a recruiter screening, which is usually the first person that you get in contact with. We actually had a couple questions on our application asking about basic knowledge of SQL, just to make sure that, if there was any miscommunication about whether the role was appropriate, that we didn't spend ask people to spend a lot more time than needed if it wasn't a good fit for them. And we kept it very simple. I think I'll say that as like a tip. If you're ever hiring, or if you see a role, we keep the questions on the application very basic, so that we don't potentially filter out folks who are a little more junior, folks with where there's an opportunity for miscommunication. Just very basic SQL join question. After the recruiter screen, who asks a little bit about your experience and what's most important to you in a job, we had a department screening with somebody on my team who spent about 45 minutes asking questions just about your own experience. And the things that we found most important were your ability to solve a variety of different problems, specifically within an R&D space, because this is our major area of focus, and that often looks very different than, say, if you're on a marketing team or a revenue team. The problems are just often very, very different. We asked questions about how you might communicate results to stakeholders, because we have a lot of different stakeholders with a variety of technical knowledge, and we wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable doing that. And we consider that to be a first-class skill, just next to modeling, is your ability to then distill it down to something that can create action and value as quickly as possible. Beyond that, we had a take-home test, and this one we very intentionally designed to replicate, one, what our data model tends to look like, what some common problems are that we tend to solve. And we did our best to make sure that folks had time to complete it. We know a lot of times with data science interviews, you might have a timed technical test. We really wanted to remove as much of the anxiety as possible, create as much flexibility for folks with different priorities, requirements, family obligations, to be able to complete a take-home test within a week. But we generally recommended that you spend no more than 2-3 hours on it. We didn't need it to be perfect peer-reviewed paper, just a reflection of what you might do as part of a day-to-day assignment. Beyond that, if you pass the take-home test, we brought you onto an on-site, which was a day-long set of interviews in which you got to meet some of the folks on my team, some of the folks on data engineering, and as well as the folks on different teams that you might be collaborating with it. So let's say like a product manager, a designer, potentially somebody on more of the customer side with the stakeholders that we support on that side, and really just trying to give you a sense as to like, these are the people and the teams that you might interact with on a day-by-day basis. These are the types of questions they might answer or like ask you. And I think just overall throughout that, really focusing on what is the most realistic experience that we can provide our candidates so they can know whether or not this was a good fit for them. And we found that very helpful as far as folks actually letting us know that maybe the role wasn't a good fit for what they really wanted to lean in on. We did have some folks who told us that they wanted to maybe lean in much more on machine learning than we had on our roadmap. We had some folks who wanted to lean in on like maybe more types of modeling approaches that we don't tend to apply. But overall, it was a positive experience where we tried to make sure everybody was confident about the decisions that were being made along the way.
No, I love that. That's such a transparent process, and it gives both parties an opportunity to figure out if this is a good fit. And I think a lot of people, especially starting out in their career, to understand it's like they want their first job and that's their goal, but they have to understand that this is a place they're going to be working at for quite a long time. So I love the fact that you guys have a very thorough process and it allows for feedback from both parties. So by the way, everyone on listening in, so please share your questions, any questions you have for Mona. I don't want to monopolize those just by myself, but one question we always get these kind of topics. Many of our audience partaking boot camps, online certification, etc. And you've actually taught quite a bit for online programs yourself, Mona. So how important are these achievements, such as boot camps and online certifications? How are they viewed by hiring managers? A question we always get.
Great question too. I think the perception of boot camps has changed over time. And I think for anyone who's maybe taken one a long time ago, a lot of that perception is tied to it being perceived as more and more difficult to get a data scientist job straight out of a boot camp. And right. I hear that a lot. I don't think I have enough information to make that as a generalization. I think as a hiring manager, we did have a number of folks apply that we strongly considered as part of the process, as well as some folks that we've hired that did do boot camps. The boot camp itself, I think, generally provides a great background as to like the breadth of coding skills you're going to need, as well as what's possible in terms of ranges of data sets that you might potentially encounter. Of course, I think skipping a lot of the with the data sets that you use that are often very curated, skipping past like we said, the 80% of time you spend actually cleaning and putting it together.
Right.
Overall, though, I think that boot camps are like absolutely a fine place to go if you're considering it, and something that in the context of the rest of your resume, your interests, as well as what you do with the knowledge you gained in that boot camp can absolutely be an asset for you. So I think as an example, if you come from an industry that you're very passionate about and want to stay in, continue to build a skill set as a data scientist, that's an excellent way to really to get your first job as a data scientist. So if you have maybe I think whatever department you might have worked in before, maybe a customer facing role, maybe like a finance role, I think those are things I've commonly seen. Leaning into how what you learn in the boot camp can solve problems in the domains that you already have context on is going to help you build the most realistic portfolio you can outside of maybe just like a Kaggle data set or an already curated data set that's available online. Lean into what you know, lean into what you're passionate about, and show how you're building and continuing to build upon the skills that you gained in a boot camp. Because realistically, it takes a very long time, I think, to really get the full breadth of what's possible with data science. The bootcamp is just the beginning. So having a good learning path beyond that, having a path to network and start thinking about introducing yourself to companies for more junior roles, like a career fair at ODSC, I think is a good example. And I've known some folks who've gone to that and made connections with companies that are hiring there. yeah, I think overall, not a bad investment at all. But be prepared that it is definitely not the be all end all. It's the start. It's a very, very good start of what's a long-term learning journey and an opportunity to show what you really care about.
Yeah, no, I can definitely confirm that, and that's fantastic advice because I've seen it over the years myself. You know, I know DSC, we have our own kind of mini boot camp, but I always give the same advice to people. It's like some boot camps are definitely more thorough than others, but generally, as you said, it's definitely a starting point because we all know that, you know, especially in the engineering disciplines and a lot of professions, it's a lifelong learning journey, and that's why the passion you mentioned earlier comes. It's such an important part of it, because we always encourage people like boot camps can be great for just figuring out is this a career I want, but I always encourage people to, if they can afford it, because there is a definitely a time constraint as well as a monetary constraint to going and doing a full-time STEM degree or doing something even part-time. So exactly, I always see it as a great stepping stone, but not something that in and of itself, and I think a lot of beginners make that same mistake. I went and I got a Coursera certificate, so why am I getting all these jobs in data science? You have to combine that with something else. So I think that's really solid advice. I don't know how much you want to touch upon this, but you know, when you're hiring a junior data scientist in particular, and I think you already did mention some of these points, but what are some of the skills you're looking for in a junior data scientist? Can you speak to that a little bit, or what's some advice you can give to a junior data scientist? Because, you know, you look at a job description, it's a long list of things. It's tools, platforms, it's skill, it's all mixed into one. You wonder even, you know, Greenhouse sounds, you guys are very transparent and you probably carefully curate what's going into your job descriptions, but I think a lot of companies don't do that. They just throw a bunch of tools and platforms and skills out there and assume you've got everything there. So any advice you can give our audience on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll asterisk this with our most recent round of hiring. We were not looking specifically for folks who were starting off as like an entry level or junior data scientist with at least about a year of experience in the field. So I think take this with a slight grain of salt. But I think as a data science manager looking for there we go. Okay.
You're back, Mona. Welcome back.
There we are. That's technology is what it is. As a data science manager, what I'd be looking for is leaning into probably like either Python or SQL or R or SQL. Truthfully, I think a good knowledge of SQL is the best place to start. Start with SQL, I think is really going to be my first advice to anyone who's interested in data science or interested in analytics, that SQL is probably the most ubiquitous skill that you can learn, because anywhere you go and apply, there's a wide range of complexities of data models that are available to you. So being able to effectively work with whatever data that you're provided with is probably the first step. So definitely make sure that you're comfortable working with like joins, with filtering, aggregation, window functions, subqueries, and really just like build up that SQL skill set. Beyond that, between Python or R, probably still the most two common languages that are being used. Python, I think, is more common than R, but there's still a good range of jobs where leveraging R can be a strong advantage, especially in certain industries. So you don't need to know everything. And I think if to your point, you see jobs that want, I don't know, many years of experience for junior roles with like 10 different languages, it is okay to say that that job just isn't a good fit for you. You can also take a look at that and apply for it anyway. I believe like most people who apply to jobs meet maybe like 60 to 70% of the qualifications. And this is actually an area in hiring that we see a big bias difference, where people from underrepresented groups tend to not apply to jobs unless they meet 100% of the skill set. And then folks from like non-underrepresented backgrounds tend to apply when they meet like 50 to 60. So if you meet, yeah, I know you learn a lot, I think, in this industry that's very interesting about like what can really make a difference. If you feel like you meet the core, I think the core like skills, maybe you're missing a couple of tools, that's okay. Feel free to go and apply anyway. That's still potentially an opportunity for you. Lean into, I think, what interests you as far as domain experience. Lean into like your portfolio and keep building pieces. Like showcase a range of different skills that you can do. And I think ultimately, if there are jobs that you simply don't meet the qualifications, the truth is, like, not everyone is a fit for every job, and that's okay. That might simply not be a job that you would enjoy doing anyway. So, like, definitely keep looking. Get a sense as to which types of jobs and industries have like subsets of skills that you do tend to meet. If there are any things that show up again and again that are clear gaps that you can build a baseline of knowledge in. And yeah, I think ultimately beyond that, if you feel like you don't necessarily have a ton of experience or all of the skills and qualifications for a job, it's still often acceptable and often makes a huge difference to make a case as to like what innovation and passion and unique perspective you might bring to the problem at hand, beyond just like the technical skills that you can learn over time while at that job.
No, absolutely fascinating insight, Mona. And just following up on this related question, maybe too close to this one, but I see one path for, say, the junior data scientist who came out of a 6-month boot camp or a 2-year master's or a 1-year master's program. But then I see a lot of other people looking to transition from a career into an AI career, right? Some kind of data or AI career. And that's kind of a bit of a different journey. Like, they may already have families, they may already have more commitment, time commitments. But any advice you can offer them? Because I think when they're looking, as mentioned before, applying for jobs, and they see this laundry list of skills and platforms, but in addition to that, there may be things that they might not understand that the way a lot, because hearing you describe the interview process and what's important, the communication, for example, they may undervalue that because their previous career wasn't a strong communication career, for example. So can you speak maybe a little bit to career transitioners versus someone who's just starting out their career?
Yeah, of course. I think for folks that I've seen personally, as well as I think this ties into my own experience, a lot of the time, especially if you can't, quit your job for a boot camp for 3 months, you don't have the ability to take limited time internships. You have, like you said, commitments that maybe create barriers for your ability to follow this singular path. There are a lot of great asynchronous learning tools out there, or part-time learning tools, as well as programs, like sources. I think like you guys started AI Plus specifically for that. So there's a combination of live trainings and then on-demand trainings that you can do. And ultimately, I think just creating a sustainable learning plan for yourself, either in terms of learning a specific skill over time, reaching a specific goal, completing a certification program. And I think just building like the evidence and portfolio that you need in order to show like what you are capable of is a reasonable path to follow. The other thing is, especially with career transitions, for something where you have context on maybe a specific type of business, that's a huge asset. And I think a lot of what you end up learning for the first few months in your first job, if you're straight out of a boot camp, is how exactly these things work in the type of business or organization that I'm in. And then really beginning to understand like the broader context of how the business works, how people actually derive value from the work that you do, how you can maximize that value, what works and what doesn't, as far as like types of modeling approaches in the real world in different contexts, because not everything fits every problem equally. All of these types of contexts of just organizational and business processes are a huge strength that you can leverage in that learning process.
No, exactly. I think well said. Now, just following up on a little bit, we know AI, data science, machine learning, that field it's expanding rapidly, and lots of new roles coming out in that. So what are some of the new and exciting roles and responsibilities you see emerging? Because not everyone in this field needs to be a data science or a machine learning engineer. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I don't want to say I know roles, but I think in terms of responsibilities, I think there are huge opportunities for folks who bring a strong ethical background and knowledge and ethics to the table, because there is a lot and growing concern as to potential ethical concerns or biased models created with AI. So really being somebody who can do that kind of like in-depth model auditing, understanding how to build and optimize a model for the specific processes that you need beyond just basic and balanced accuracy. There's a strong need for communication in a lot of contexts and really maximizing the value of your work. And not every, it's not fair to expect, I think, every data scientist to be an expert in every single thing. So I think there is a lot of opportunity for people who like want to communicate results within an org. So I would say as like a metaphor and analysis, like the kind of person who distills the press releases from a peer-reviewed article into something that can be consumed on the 6 o'clock news. So like really somebody who can take your findings, take your work, and really like tap into the potential of what it is that you've actually done, both in terms of like what you found along the way as part of building a production machine learning model or some types of statistical modeling for understanding and building knowledge about a process. I think data engineering has seen some very impressive splits as far as areas of specialty lately. So that's something I would highly focus on. I think the analytics engineering role as a distinct concept is still only a few years old. But since then, we've seen analytics engineers being hired everywhere, entire analytics engineering team focusing on the needs of modeling in the modern like data warehouse context. And then also the types of teams around that need to support the tooling necessary to enable productivity on a data science team. So like internally, we think of that as the data platform function at Greenhouse.
That's magnificent. Because actually, believe it or not, Mona, I was working on a blog this morning, and I gathered a bunch of data on data analysts. I was just looking at job descriptions and all that kind of stuff. And I kept on seeing the role of data engineer and programming, and like, because we're working with unstructured data. I was trying to figure out, is that because you're a data analyst and you have to work with data engineers? And now I realized from just talking to you, there is actually a role of engineering analysts. So I think that was worth the price of admission today alone. So thank you for that insight. That's awesome. So just going back to our original kind of discussion here. So when I introduced you, it seems that you were very active in volunteer projects, or were very active in volunteer projects. So can you tell us a little bit about some of those projects you worked on and why you worked on those projects?
Sure. So I think some of it's going to be related to teaching. I think, as I've mentioned, that's a passion of mine. So I've taught like free courses on intro to programming. That's something that I'm actually in the process of getting set up with my local library to do. A lot of libraries do look for volunteers to teach like intro to Python, intro to SQL, intro to general programming concepts. That's very common, or intro to data analysis. I've worked with a local community conference called NYC Open Data, which is a public works conference that occurs every year. And I generally present topics. I've presented topics there in the past and talked about specifically how you can be responsible in your analysis using demographic information, because that's often very sensitive. Those are very sensitive pieces of information about the people that you're capturing data about. In the past, I've worked with some different community, like grassroots organizing groups, to help build up good data practices. And understand like what data do they need to collect, what do their surveys need to look like to be effective. I've worked with a nonprofit, or this was further back, but I think was definitely one of the more like something that's really left an impression on me, was a group called Theater of the Oppressed NYC. So specifically a theater group that's looking to create, and I will say, like, look them up. I think they explain this a lot better than I do. Like create opportunities for theater troupes to basically just like present about like many of the difficult experiences that they've had in life. I helped work with them on structuring their survey so they can gain effectively gain the information they need to build cases for grant writing. That's often a huge thing that comes up, being able to structure like effective data capture, survey capture, as well as data analysis to be able to continue offering valuable programs to different communities. So I think like that's been something that I've done in the past as well.
Oh, so many great projects. And, many aspiring data scientists, engineers, they're told to build a portfolio of work to demonstrate that you're competent in data science or engineering. And, a lot of that work is done in isolation. How important or how useful do you think it is that aspiring data scientists find ways to volunteer their skills to help build their portfolios?
I'd say if you really are looking for ways to get an understanding of real world problems, how to solve real world problems, and you have the time to dedicate, volunteering is an excellent way to do that. And there are so many different options in terms of how much time you might actually be able to dedicate to volunteering. Like some volunteering, like some programs might ask for, say like 10 hours a week. It's very often possible to do a lot less if you don't have time. So like teaching a class at the local library is something that's maybe one night a week or once a month. There's a lot of flexibility in those things. Most major metropolitan areas have tons of civic tech groups, nonprofit groups. There are also meetups, like organizing meetups is something that you can do. Most cities in the US that I know of have maybe a Python meetup, a data science meetup. Those are, I think, all really good options that are available to you.
No, absolutely. And at ODSC, I think we were up to about 70 meetups. We're always looking for volunteers. We're absolutely looking for speakers as well. A great way to demonstrate your speaking skills, and so many good projects out there. And hope, knock on wood, now that we're post-pandemic, we used to go to a lot of hackathons, so hopefully they will start to reoccur. So, Mona, we are at the 45-minute mark. So again, thank you.
Absolutely been my pleasure. Oh, there we go.
I think I lost. Yeah, so let me just repeat for people didn't get that. Yeah, I was just saying, Mona, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for being both a speaker and an instructor at this year's ODSC East, and just telling folks that is both virtual and in person. So regardless of where you are in the world, you can grab a free pass, check out Mona's upcoming talk. And again, Mona, really pleasure having you on, and thank you so much for all your wonderful, wonderful insights.
Absolutely been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in 3 short weeks. Bye now.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.